peace-building work. His career connects political leadership, crisis logistics, food security, fundraising, and diplomacy. Please join with me to give Professor Beasley a round of applause. To start our session, I will invite Professor Howard Yana Shapiro and allow Professor 7 to 8 minutes to deliver your welcoming remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here. And I'm also very saddened to be here to understand the amount of stunting in children under 5 that exceeds 40% of the rural population. It's a terrifying number for me to hear. That means that if 5 of us were walking down the street, 2 of us would have suffered childhood stunting, which is irreversible. So for me, that's just a heartbreak. And to the young people I look out at the audience, you're very fortunate to have had the appropriate nutrition to be able to reach the academic heights that you have today. But many of your younger friends, colleagues, children who are growing up are being stunted by lack of nutrition at the most critical point, which is not after a child is born, but before a child is born, and the ability to deliver to a mother the appropriate nutrition needed. This means enough folates to get neural tube developments going, enough vitamin A to stop night blindness, enough zinc to stop cretinism in children. And I could go on about the different micro and macronutrients. But what it really talks about is we must have a system of land use. We must have a system of production. We must have a system of seed certification for improved crops. We must have systems of distribution. We must have systems of consumption that we understand. And we must ask ourselves every day of the week, is the food that we are eating as nutritious as it could be if we applied modern plant science, genetics, and modern technologies? So, in addition to that, I think one has to think that all systems must have the following things. They must be financially viable, otherwise no one will operate in that system. They must have technical feasibility, which means the seeds that are delivered and the nutrients that are needed for the soil are available to the farmer. They must be environmentally sustainable. Every system must have that record behind it. They must be operationally deliverable. They must be deliverable, otherwise it's great to have academics, myself included, who do the great work, but it never reaches the rural or peri-urban household. And then it must be socially and politically acceptable. Plant science is not the panacea for everything else. You've heard wonderful comments earlier today about things that are going on in the world in astronomy, in chemistry. But plants and how we feed each other are the fundamental truth of humanity. If we cannot deliver nutritious food to our neighbors, to our communities, 100 miles from our house, into the big cities, then we have failed miserably in the ability to feed ourselves. And it's not only calories, it's nutrition. If we look at the rural diet in many parts of the world, it's not highly nutritious. It's heavy in carbohydrates. What if we were to fix all the things they eat that have not been improved? I'm not talking about maize or wheat or rice or the big 10 crops. I'm talking about everything else that people eat that are basically orphan crops because they have not had the modern plant science attached to it. That is the way we're going to fix most of our food systems. And then the second part has to be, and it must be, the distribution and the reduction of waste. There's plenty of food produced in the world, but most of it is wasted on its way to the marketplace. So how do we do that in a country like Timor-Leste? How do we do it in Southeast Asia? How do we do it in Africa, South America? Even in the United States, there's a tremendous amount of food waste that would feed many more people. But the fundamental issue that I want you to take away is that how nutritious is the food that we eat? Can we improve it? And the answer is empirically yes. And the science is available to do that. And I'm not talking about genetic modification. I'm talking about traditional plant breeding and understanding markers, which we call marker-assisted selection, to be able to deliver the most important issues, which is nutrition to the entire communities, but especially when a young woman pre-pregnancy needs to have all the nutrition that she can deliver a healthy baby. And it's not enough to feed that child after they're born. They'll be stunted for life. There's no way to overcome this. So that would be my plea and cry, is that many of you become plant breeders, you fix the system, and we end chronic hunger and malnutrition causing stunting in children.
Thank you, Professor Beasley. Now I'm handing over the time to Governor Beasley. 7 to 8 minutes, please.
Howard, thank you. Howard's expertise is absolutely remarkable, and his comments about the stunting, the wasting that's taking place here at home is really heartbreaking. However, there has been progress made. You've got your freedom, you've received your liberty, you fought for it hard, and progress is being made, but there's so much more work to be done. I talked with the president yesterday about this. We're going to talk more about this. In fact, the head of the World Food Program, Jacqueline de Groot, is here. We're talking about how the World Food Program, our expertise around the world, and the successes that we've had in places like Pakistan, and how can we implement, given the technology, given the expertise, to the leaders and the people here in Timor to address the stunting, the wasting. But as Howard said, stunting isn't just about the first 1,000 days after the day of birth. It's also about the 9 months of getting proper nutrition for that mother. It's absolutely critical. And the failure to get the right nutrition, literally, of the stunting impact can be an impact of about 15% of your GDP. It's absolutely incredibly important to address this issue. Now, there's good news and bad news. When you look at 200 years ago, when the world's population was 1.1 billion, 85 to 95% of the people on planet Earth were in extreme poverty. Now think about that. Today with about 1 billion people, 8 billion people, less than 9% are in extreme poverty. So we're building systems, institutions, and programs of sharing more wealth and technology than we've ever seen before. The sad news is we do grow enough food to feed every human being on the planet. But yet there's 350 million people marching to starvation as we speak. Think about that. We waste at the food table or in the field enough food to feed 2 billion people, over $1 trillion in value. What can we do in Timor to make certain that the crops that are produced make it to the market and not lost along the way? What can we do to make certain that in Timor and other places in the world you get better seeds that require less water, that require less fertilizer, that require less pesticides and herbicides, plants that are healthier for our children? That's the excitement we do see on the horizon with the research that's taking place all over the world. While AI scares me on one side, it's exciting on the other hand to see so much progress being made. The good news is we've made a lot of progress. The bad news is we're going backwards in many other ways, not because of technology, but because of man-made conflict and climate shocks. When I took over the leadership of the World Food Program, which I did not want to do, best job I've ever had in my life, I got talked into it by a group of Republican and Democrats who control foreign aid. And they said, you've got to do this. You're the only one that can talk. At that time, 2016, 2017, President Trump cutting international aid. Well, we were able to achieve that. Aid was not cut. We grew the program. We went from feeding 80 million people a day to 160 million people a day around the world, stabilizing populations, implementing resilience programs, doing so much good, stabilizing populations, mitigating against migration by necessity, and I could go on and on. And so my first year, we were 80 million people, Howard, marching to starvation. I'm thinking, as a former United States governor and a business person, that I could put the World Food Program out of business. There's no reason we can't do that. Only to see the first year, the number of people marching to starvation went from 80 million to 125 million. Why? Man-made conflict, climate shocks. The second year, it went from 125 to 250 million people. What happened? COVID, supply chain disruption all over the world. And you think it can't get any worse? Russia invades the breadbasket of the world. Ukraine, the number goes to 350 million people. And now we're facing the Strait of Hormuz, what's taking place there, which is putting additional pressure on the farmers with regards to increased inputs of not just fertilizer costs and availability, but fuel, and I can go on and on. And the poorest of the poor are struggling in ways we've not seen. And now with El Nino coming into the equation, what impact is that going to be on top of an already very bad situation? So that's the dark side, that's the horrible news, but the good news is there is hope. I was doing a TV show with you wouldn't know it, called 60 Minutes. It's the most powerful documentary in the world on Sunday night. And Scott Pelley was so moved by what the World Food Program and many of us were doing in areas of war and conflict. He's taken off the microphone with me after the TV show's over, and he looks at me and he says, "Governor, you've got the greatest job in the world, saving the lives of millions of people every single day." And I looked at him and I said, "Scott, I do. I really do. But I'm going to tell you something that you haven't thought of, and it's going to break your heart." And he looked at me like, "What could that be?" And I said, "I don't go to bed at night thinking about the children we saved. I go to bed at night brokenhearted over the children we couldn't save. And when we don't have enough money, I have to choose. My teams, we have to choose which children eat, which children don't eat, which children live, which children die. How would you like that job, Scott?" And he looked at me horrified and said, "Oh my God, you've got the worst job in the world." I said, "The sad news, it's not hypothetical with us. It's a reality that we face every day." Then he looked at me and said, "How do you stay positive with all the suffering you see and the death of children?" I said, "Well, it's easier than you think. When I'm out there in the field, and 80% of our operations are in areas of war and conflict, when I see that little 3, 4, 5-year-old little girl walk from behind that war rubble building that might be in Afghanistan or Syria or Ukraine, when I see that little girl, that little boy, I see that as the image of God, my little brother, my little sister, and that's not a statistic. That little girl has a name. That little boy has a voice, and that's what drives me. So in spite of all the negative that's out there, I can assure you there's so much reason to have hope. And when I sit down and listen to leaders like Howard, when you hear what men and women like, what they're doing, it's remarkable. We're going to be growing enough food. We've got more work to be done. And we look forward to working and partnering with Timor. I know the World Food Program does. And so we're excited about the opportunities. When I see the leadership and the hope in the faces of the leaders here, it gives me hope that opportunities are abounding. So let me stop there and turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you very much, Governor. A round of applause to Governor Besley. Professor, 1.4 million hectares, of which about 300,000 hectares are arable, with a population of 1.3 million people, of which about 70% are farmers, living almost largely in the uplands, performing subsistence farming, relying mainly on rain-fed irrigation, with a number of major irrigation schemes in place across the country. But in terms of food production, we are importing more than half of what our needs are. And in terms of agroclimatic zones, we have 6 agroclimatic zones, 3 in the northern part. We have northern lowlands, northern slopes, and northern highlands. And we have exactly 3 identical zones in the opposite southern part. So the lowland only consists of around 20% of our land. And you have mentioned about nutrition system, food system. And my first question to Professor Shapiro and also Governor Besley, for Timor-Leste, in our current setting, what should a food system transformation mean in practical terms for our smallholder farmers?
It's not a simple question. I arrived in Timor 72 hours ago. I read about it before I came online. I have some fundamental understanding of what is going on. There are food crops that are grown by traditional people in the mountains, household gardens we call them in many places. And those just need to be improved to become more efficient. It's not hard, but those crops need to be improved, whether it's through traditional plant breeding or using technologies like genetic engineering.
Professor Shapiro, can you speak a bit louder?
Yes.
Can you... Alin sila Rona gala? Rona?
So I don't think land is the constraint. You mentioned a lot of the areas in the highlands are based on rainfall. I would ask you, how much water do you collect into reservoirs to use for irrigation in the dry season? These are simple things to do. We took an area in Vietnam in the Central Highlands which had been deforested and used for coffee, and they were diminishing the aquifer and salinating it. We showed them a technology called using swales into retention ponds where we collected enough water so in the dry season they were able to irrigate their crops. So that'd be one thing. How much water do you collect? You don't want it to run into the ocean. You want to be able to use it. You want to be able to use it to farmers. If you don't collect it all at the top of the mountain, collect it at the middle of the mountain. What doesn't collect there, collect it at the bottom of the mountain. So water should not be a constraint. Good seed, and my colleague mentioned seed. I can't tell you how important certified seed is that produces. If we have areas where we are growing in more drought-tolerant areas, then we need to get plants that have that characteristic. And we had a gentleman from the Australian National University. They have a big agriculture department there, University of Sydney, Melbourne. Many places in Australia could become partners with you in this breeding program to facilitate the ability to grow crops where they need to grow the best. Now, will you ever be 100% on the amount of land you have? I would say it's improbable. But you don't want to grow stuff that is grown a broad acre, thousands of acres of land that you don't have to grow a wheat or a maize or a sorghum. But those critical vegetables and fruits, and mountainsides are great. I mean, I've eaten delicious fruits since I've been here. Highly nutritious, important for all kinds of vitamins. What can we do to help design that system? But it starts with seed. I hope that, again, I'll repeat it, many of you become plant breeders and work on plant breeding for yield, for climatic resilience, for water and nutrient use efficiency, for pest and disease resistance. But the word nutrition has to go throughout all of what we're talking about. I know the World Food Program works on it at a certain level. I'm down here at the household. That has to be repaired as well. And no child should go to bed hungry. It really breaks my heart. I agree with what my colleague said specifically. It breaks our heart when we go to bed at night when we know a child is being born that's stunted. Places in Africa, 10, 12, 14% of the GDP is reduced by caring for those people who are stunted. We shouldn't have that. Humanity should not allow that kind of aspect of disaster to happen to anyone in the world. To me, it's the first principle. Everyone should have highly nutritious food to be able to become whoever they are.
Yeah. Governor.
Someone just died from hunger. Every 4 seconds. Add another 4 seconds, a child just died from hunger. When there's $500 trillion worth of wealth on planet Earth, that's inexcusable, unacceptable. So you're not alone with this problem. But what can we do here in Timor? And I think what Dr. Shapiro is talking about is focusing, being strategic, the better seeds that you can use. What landscape rehabilitation needs to be made so you have resilience and sustainability. We can give example after example from Vietnam to, I can go from countries all over the world where at the World Food Program, we work, for example, in Mazar el-Sharif in Afghanistan. This was just a simple example. So you have the flash floods and all the crops that were being grown down in the flatland right below the mountains would get just wiped away. So we came in and worked with the type of terrain that you have here, putting up irrigation lines, water systems such that we can put the water in pools of water with small dams and reservoirs so that when you have a drought, you can draw from the reservoirs down into the valley. And when you have the flash flooding, the water is diverted such that it's captured. And I remember standing on the hill with the tribal leader, and he said, Mr. Beasley, years ago our children were leaving because they had no hope. And they were joining extremist groups and leaving the country. And now they bring their friends over to show the success that we're now feeding ourselves. There's no reason that that can't be done here. Now, the young people, this is up to you to work with the leaders here to make this happen. The new seeds that are becoming available, they're out there. And it's only going to get better and better. At the World Food Program, when I was there, I remember we started over 300,000 community gardens. My goal would be to come back here in a few years and you don't need the World Food Program, you don't need WHO, you don't need UNICEF, you don't need a single UN agency here because you've taken ownership and put in place the systems for the great success. I've walked the streets in the last 2 days and you can see in the hearts of the young people a desire that's unparalleled in anywhere in the world. You can get this done. You can make this happen. I have no doubt about this. It's exciting. But in the meantime, there's a lot of work to be done. As we were driving up to Fort Balabu, seeing the terrain, this is just on this side, of course, of what we didn't see. I would love to have a whole day in a helicopter flying around looking and saying, all right, here, 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 and here. But talking with your leaders who understand what the realities are and what are the practical solutions. This is a time like this. I do think with AI is so much good that can come from it. While we're fearful of some elements of it, I think we're going to be able to path forward a lot of opportunities that allow us to grow food cheaper, more strategically, and more nutritiously.
I would just add one thing. If you don't have a helicopter, there's groups like C4 Aircraft. C4 is in Bogor, Indonesia, close by. They have satellites that circle the globe on a constant basis. You could get all the kind of terrain information you need and want. They probably have information going back 10 to 15 years of satellite images of this region. So you could start to make the initial discussions and understandings about that. And don't believe that you have to do this by yourself. This is something I want to really drive home. Uncommon collaborations. The World Food Program, University of California, Davis, C4 Aircraft. They're institutions. The big seed companies have interest in you. They don't want you to fail. They want you to succeed so you'll buy their seeds. but they have things that might be appropriate that you could go to. Universities have programs where they're looking for problem solving, and this is a problem solving event. We know the problem. Now we have to solve it. So don't believe that it's the two of us plus a few other people who are going to make the game exactly what you want. It'll be these uncommon collaborations, people who not have ever worked together before, specifically on Timor-Leste. But now's the time to engage those people to help in this process.
Let me take advantage of this technology. I mean, with AI, I mean, this is the amazing thing. I give speeches all over the world about we're more connected now because of the internet, social media, than we've ever been in the history of the world, but yet we're more divided. But on the other hand, technology has given us so many doors of opportunity of having better foods and better access to what's been working around the world that you can partner and bring here in Timor. Jacqueline, I was talking to her at World Food Program Director here about Sanutrio, which is a program that the country of Timor-Leste is implementing now in the World Food Program. We're just providing some expertise and the implementation of these types of programs. So for the young people, you can go online and find so much data, so much information. And one of the things I always try to do to make certain that those of us in leadership, whether it's in government or in the United Nations, don't let our arrogance and ego get in the way of new ideas and new solutions. You young people, you're on the internet surfing all the time. You know, yeah, you do a lot of stupid things you shouldn't be doing, but don't we all? But surfing on the good things that can bring solutions here and bring that to the leaders, because a lot of times you just don't know. I can't tell you how many times I had someone on my team that would come to me with an idea and I'd want to hear about it, because sometimes that's that one idea that will change the paradigm for you.
Thank you, Governor. Allow me to address my fellow countrymen shortly in Tatum. Alin Sira, estudantes no mestre Sira. Primeira pergunta, não vamos colocar ba itania oradores na rua né, kulia kona ba hareba itania situação, não vemos maioria da população 70% agricultor, moris e rai, não vemos praticamente marang quase tinan tomak. Isso depende da udang bem, da halo agricultura. Aihan, maioria ita se importa ela. Então, a uso do senhor na rua, né? Se ita cara halo transformação do baita no sistema alimentar, saída é chave. Leve o professor Shafiro, nós o governador David, até kata ia buat rua tolo. Ira ita tem hadia tem fini, seed. No, ita la bela considera B nesse problema. B fulantolo não vemos que ita hetan tinan, ita halo esforço hirana para tu coleta bene, para ita bela usa falia bailoron. Nós ia conversa particular do governador David, ita B rai ocos iha. O insama que a tecnologia bela ajuda ita bela explora B os rai ocos para sustenta ita atividades agrícolas. Nebe Alin Sira, mestre Sira, prepara na fato em Hanoi de dia qual, cara que perguntas ruma, e tá tempo limitado do nem, mas o cara que facilita e a o melhor esforço possível para tu loca sessão de você Alin Sira. Professor na rua né, Sira preocupa com stunting. Tamba ita labarik barak maka malnutrição, malnutritido. Tamba né maka la suficiente para ita tohan barak date. Mas bem tem hang nebe maka e a nutrição para bela lori efeito dia que tem saúde mental físico ba itania moris no mas vai ter serviço. Professor Shafiro and also Governor David, you talk about stunting, you talk about nutrition. How Timor-Leste can do to make nutritious, especially children, nutritious food an agricultural objective, rather than only a health sector objective?
I think it's a fundamental question, and you're raising a very important part. I wish the President was here and the Prime Minister, we would be talking to them specifically, because they're the ones who are going to have to state this is a fundamental thing that we must do. We must end chronic hunger and malnutrition and stunting in children. It's a mandate. It's not a too nice to have, it's a mandate. If the number that someone told me today is 40% stunting, it's almost a crime against humanity to think that that many children will never be anyone in this room. They won't be a Nobel laureate. They won't be a Turing Award winner. They won't have the opportunities that we hope that all of these students will have, because they had a healthy upbringing. They got the right nutrition at the right time in the mother's womb. So the government needs to say this is a fundamental truth. We will end chronic hunger and malnutrition in 10 years, because it'll take that long to do the plant breeding and to do the education and to do the outreach to the communities where we've never talked about this before.
The government has a role and a responsibility in this matter. But let me also say in the private sector. The private sector also has an opportunity. I think this culture is like 97% Catholic or something like that. And the teachings of Catholicism, the teachings of Jesus of love your neighbor, the teachings of the Torah of love your neighbor. These are fundamental obligations and commandments that we have for one another. Loving your neighbor is everybody. And when I see a nation of 1.1 million people, give or take, there's no reason we can't reach every neighbor inside Timor-Leste. Now, you're going to be, if you watch social media over the next year, I'm going after, like, for example, there are 50 million millionaires, billionaires, 50 million of them. We got 350 million people marching to starvation. That means if I can only get each billionaire to support 7 people at $5 a day, or actually it's $1.50 a day. Oh, come on, that's ridiculous. Why couldn't we end hunger? Is it too much to ask the billionaires to support 7 little children a day at $1.50 a day? I mean, it just isn't much to do. So here in Timor, when I was at the UN, I remember when I came into the system, they would talk about these platitudes. And I would say, well, okay, they wanted a way to work better. I'm like, well, tell me how it's going to work right there. I remember in some of my first meetings at the World Food Program, I was meeting with UN leadership in some of the countries, and I was trying to understand the systems. And I said, how long have you been here in this country? And this agency might say, we've been here 30 years, and this one would probably say we've been here 35 years, and this one would say we've been here 25 years. And I wasn't being disrespectful, but I would say after we went around the table, and they all had good hearts, they all meant well, but I asked this question. I said, maybe it's not working? Shouldn't your goal be to put yourself out of business? So what are the tools that you need to put into place so that you end stunting? So every child in Timor has a nutritious diet. You've only got several 100,000 children of this age. These are children that aren't just numbers. They got names, they have voices. Let's identify them. And don't look just to your government to be the responsible player. You, in your neighborhood, your friends, your cousins, your communities, what can you do? And while you do that in your own individual capacity, and businesses do that, then you've got the moral standing to then say to your government, we've got to do more. What systems can we put in place? And there are systems that can be put in place. And what I understand from some of the natural resources they're really going to bring some opportunity here, this should be a fundamental building block for your country. Without proper nutrition, without food security, almost everything else is secondary. You've got to reach the fundamentals of proper nutrition to develop the mind and the heart and the soul of every child in Timor-Leste.
Just a couple more points on the technologies. The technologies that we have currently for plant breeding are not the same ones that I had 50 years ago when I was starting out as a young plant breeder. actually 65 years ago, as a young plant breeder. And what I can tell you, the information that we know at a very small level is so infinitely better than when I used to walk fields of maize for hours on end, making a decision. Now I can do it with all the tools that are available to me. And in addition to the traditional plant breeding, a few years ago, during COVID, the Nobel Prize was given to Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier for their discovery of a technology called CRISPR, which basically means I could go in without genetically modifying with the GMO technology. I had these little molecular scissors, and I could cut out the area of a gene that was receiving the disease that was pressuring that plant and replace it with resistance. It sounds like science fiction, right? But it's actually real. It's being employed everywhere in the world. And the original CRISPR was owned by a company called Corteva. But now we are building open access. So everyone in this room could have access to all the information they need to do a gene-edited, not a GMO plant. Now we have to work with the government to make sure we have the protocols in place for that technology. We can help with that. We're more than willing to help with that. Our fans around the world where we're doing this know that this is part of the future. And it reduces the time for plant breeding substantially, especially for tree crops, but also for giving you higher nutritional levels. And systems can be put in place, and we're happy to help you get this done. But we need the government buy-in, we need your local industry buy-in, we need the people who are supplying the bulk of your imported food crops to buy in, to take some percentage of their profitability, maybe 2, 3, 4% of that, and apply it to modern plant breeding, and set up the center here in Timor-Leste at one of your universities or national research institutions where we can actually turn the clock faster and faster and faster to end this plague.
This is not science fiction. This is reality knocking on our door. It's not science fiction. This is reality knocking on the door today. Well, 75 years ago, the amount of harvest per acre in the United States is double now, isn't it? Quadrupled. And it's only going to go up and up and up. And now we're looking at products, seeds that require less water, less fertilizer. It's just, and seeds that, because you've got certain places in Timor-Leste that a particular pesticide is a problem. So what type of seeds is going to be unique for that particular pesticide? And so these are the type of things that are now available and are coming online literally as we speak daily. So there's no reason, in my opinion, Timor-Leste should have stunting if you commit yourself to addressing these issues and taking advantage of the expertise that's out there.
One more thing. You young people, you don't need a PhD in plant breeding to start making these kinds of moves. Choose a plant. Do a little research. Start your own breeding program. You can do it in your backyard. You can do it in a tabletop. It doesn't matter. You'll start to learn by looking very carefully at what's growing. A plant that is precocious and grows much faster might be interesting for you than a plant that grows slower. So you'll start to make decisions about the future of your food system from your kitchen table or from your backyard. Don't wait to get a PhD to do this. Start going online and understanding these technologies that are available and applying it.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Shapiro and Governor David. Now I'm giving the opportunity for the floor for the students and professors, and also since the comments made by Professor Shapiro and also Governor David mentioned about the role of the government, and probably representative from the government can also make some comments due to the question that I raised, how Timor-Leste can make a nutritious food system, or a nutritious children food system, particularly an agricultural objective, not merely a health sector objective. Neve na ministro sira kari ko sira balong bela kara komenta ko na ne. Mas há oportunidade para tina ali jovem sira, estudante sira, a hal perguntas. Por favor. Yeah. Can you make your question clear and directed to whom? And please introduce yourself as well.
Thank you. My name is Felipe da Costa. I work with the FAO. It's an honor for me to be here to address these questions. Actually, I'm not sure if you can hear me.
My basic trait ito ane para. Please come closer.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, this might be better. More. Okay.
Yeah, closer. Come closer, yeah.
Okay. So what I would like to ask is that in Timor-Leste, not only stunting is a problem, but food insecurity is also a problem. And those causes the food insecurity are also low productivity. Entire food system, we have problem. Low productivity, transportation, warehousing.
Stunting is a problem, but we have also low productivity.
Food insecurity.
Productivity. So, yeah, what is the question then? Yeah?
So the question is, how should we address this? Should we continue keep the traditional way of productions, warehousing, or should... Okay, I can repeat again.
Oh, perfect.
Perfect now, okay, thank you. So I just want to say that in Timor-Leste, not only stunting is a problem, but food insecurity in Timor-Leste is one of the highest as well. And it is also because the entire food system, there is a problem, even started from productivity that is low and high production, until consumption, people understanding about consumption is also an issue here. So what I would like to ask is that, how do we solve this? Should we continue approach with our traditional way of doing farming? Let's say, keep doing organic, keep doing not using any fertilizers or just use green manure, stuff like that, or should we make new approaches? Professor Shapiro's work, I read your work on the biofortification. How do you see this is suitable for Timor-Leste? Because we have not only malnutrition, but we also have micronutrient deficiencies as well. So that is one of the comments I would like to make. Second is, I also interested in Governor Beasley's work on how to combine private sector, multi-sectoral, and government to work together in order to solve the problem. I think in Timor-Leste, we have an issue here. The investment in agriculture is actually very low. Interest in private sector towards investing in agriculture is also very low. We have a very small amount of banks allowed credit product for the agriculture sector because it is too risky here. The productivity is too high. There is no market and a lot of risk. So what is your best advice? How can we change this situation? So this is what I would like to ask. Thank you very much.
I don't even know the question.
Yeah, can you summarize the question?
Yes, we have a traditional agricultural system with low productivity and also with a low level of nutrition in various food products. But the question is, we have been doing this for such a long time. And what is your advice? Shall we keep doing it conventionally as we have done so far? And how will you advise us to shift from the current to the newest one?
Yeah, I know the gentleman mentioned the word organic.
Yeah.
Organic is fine. Biodynamic is fine. Regenerative is fine. Traditional is fine. Conventional is fine. So that's not the issue. The issue is if a third of the growth of agriculture needs to be organic, let's breed seeds for organic systems. You can't take a seed that is bred for a conventional system and expect it to be productive in an organic system because the plant has been bred to use lots of nitrogen, lots of fertilizers, lots of pesticides, lots of the full sort of cacophony of materials. Organic is a very different system. So we need to breed for that system as well as conventional systems. That's the first thing. There's nothing wrong with organics. I mean, we live in America in a very heavy organic world. And the yields are almost equal to that of conventional agriculture. But you have to have inputs. You can't just say you're organic if you don't have enough compost for the nutrients in the soil. If you don't have enough inputs for that soil specific, then you're just going to have low yields. So it's not a matter of organic versus conventional. It's a matter of breeding for those systems specifically so that the farmer that's using that technology, as he's done for hundreds, maybe thousands of years, takes advantage of every modern aspect of plant breeding they can to be more productive.
Do you remember Sri Lanka tried to go organic overnight? We warned Sri Lanka they were going to go organic. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But how you do it, when you do it, with the right inputs, and they had an absolute food catastrophe about to destroy the country. This was just, 5 years ago?
Yes.
And so when you make transitions, you've got to make certain you put in place the right things to achieve success and not stick your head in the sand and ignore reality.
And I think there's a word that is not often mentioned. It's called resilience. The resilience of what you're growing to the environment you're growing in is so critical. Resilience. The ability to respond quickly to a problem. That's what resilience is. I'm sure the World Food Program has a whole group of people dealing on resilience in the system. And so for organics, what is the resilience necessary for that system to deliver nutrition to a young woman before she's pregnant, and to the child after it's born, and to the parents and to the grandparents, so they live a healthy life? That's the definition we have to come to agree on. Not 100%, because everyone has a different opinion, but what are the fundamental systematics for a resilient organic system, a resilient conventional system for Timor-Leste? Don't look to Australia, don't look to the United States for a model. Let's build the model here.
In the area of resilience, for example, at the World Food Program in Niger, in all the villages that we implemented sustainable and resilient type programs, when shocks did hit, 80% of those villages did not need additional outside support. The cost savings was in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And so what Dr. Shapiro is talking about is so very, very important. And one of the things that also upsets me in the G7 and the G20, they talk about climate change and mitigation. Well, that's fine. Mitigation certainly should be debated. But while you're debating mitigation, you got to have adaptation, which involves resilience, so that nations, and particularly poor countries developing, can have the adaptation such that you can survive without loss of nutrition, without loss of life, without forcing migration and destabilization. And so adaptation is extremely important. So as El Nino begins to make its turn, the impact that it's going to have here, this is why we get ahead of this with resilience. You will protect your future and have greater food security because of that thinking in advance. And that's where successes from around the world learn what has worked, what has not worked, and apply it in a unique way to your culture right here at home.
Yeah, how convenient we still have time for two students or Amy, yeah. Can up? One. How many? Aling nanghiram 45 hektar ini. Ihan lah ya? Wow. Embara close, eh? Aling sira, abang ite si etan sesang with the whole professor. We still have one session tomorrow, right? Yeah.
I have two sessions tomorrow at the university.
So we can do
But we'll have one here too in the morning, in the afternoon.
I only go where they tell me to go.
Okay. Alicia, how should desculpa, because of the time, I only allow maximum 3 people. So one from this side, and one from this side, and one from this side. We still have a session tomorrow with Professor Shapiro. here. So please come back tomorrow, and then we'll have more interactive discussion. So, Aling Kuleba, introduce yourself, and then to whom the question is
obrigado pelo
addressed.
tempo. How may olhar tetun, tamba how lahir em inglês na mekedia. How narang kompetisu bitu do Carmo, husi escola Wentel, Faculdade de Medicina, no Departamento de Nutrição e Dietética. Dia, hana pergunta liga vai mestre primeiro nia na vek introdução, o tema na iha malnutrição no rice baraka o estante. Dia, how hana pergunta é na ba how atu kolhe iha ne ami nação Timor Leste. Iha Ministério da Saúde, Organização Bara, Canisan OMS, Unicef, FAO, Nomos Cruz Vermelha, sempre halo promoção no município ou área rural sira. Halo sempre halo promoção, baia kona baia rice badak, malnutrição. Mas be atu objetivo husi serne atu reduce baia rice badak no malnutrição. Mas be tare realidade la reduce, mas be na fatinamenta. O insau mestre nendrone comentário baia problema idane. Obrigado.
Yeah, according to this young gentleman, we have done a lot of trainings, awareness raising towards this stunting problem from the Ministry of Health and support from the WHO. We have done so many efforts, but in reality, the stunting persists, and even I think the number, according to this gentleman, increased. So, what is your advice on this reality?
We've got it. It's a great question. Thank you very much. It really does break my heart. I'm an old person, and it breaks my heart to think the numbers of stunting have been going up after all these efforts, as you suggest. It really starts with the fundamental food system. We need to get the Minister of Agriculture to meet with this group, you in particular, you students, and say, we need higher nutrition, deliverable food in every sector. The rural sector, the peri-urban sector, the urban sector. We, the youth of Timor-Leste, want to eliminate chronic hunger and malnutrition causing stunting. It's up to you. We will help you. We'll do everything we can. But it's up to everyone in this room to really start to say, how do we develop more nutritious, basic food, which is the system of delivery to the rural sector that they grow every day, that they've grown for hundreds of years, that maybe you grew up on. How do we put that in place? Let's figure out the way to do it together, and then implement it. It doesn't cost millions of dollars. It's a group of people starting to look at what is eaten in every part of Timor-Leste. What are the crops that have the most value for neural tube development, or for vitamin A, for night blindness elimination? Let's figure that out. And you have nutritionists in this country who can help. And if not, the World Food Program has connections everywhere in the world that can help you on understanding what are those key minerals, macro and micronutrients, vitamins, minerals. How do we get that into the food? And let's develop breeding programs. Let's do it.
Let me share an old story that was given to me when I was a kid. There was a big storm that hit the coast of South Carolina, and thousands upon thousands upon thousands of starfish were washed up on the shore. And a little boy about 4 years old, early in the morning, was walking down the beach with his dad. And the little boy was stopping and picking up starfish, throwing it in the water, picking up a starfish and throwing it in the water. And after about 10 or 15 minutes, the dad was just like, son, there are hundreds of thousands of these starfish. You can't make a difference. And the little boy reached down and picked up one more starfish and said, it makes a difference to this one, Dad, and threw it in the water. Just start one child at a time. Just get started. I have no doubt when I look at your face and I look at the hearts of these young people in this room, you've got the will, you've got the political muscle, you've got the minds, but more than anything, you've got the heart, and that will drive change.
Thank you, Governor and Professor. One last question from this part. Introduce yourself briefly and your question straight to whom you're addressing to.
Good afternoon, dignitaries. I am Anderson Samuel, studying in UNPA's International MBBS program. So, a very warm welcome to the dignitaries. And my question is, you already mentioned that we have sufficient scientific knowledge to address many challenges related to child nutrition. However, child malnutrition continues to be a problem, particularly in developing countries. So, from your experience, what do you think is the biggest gap between the scientific knowledge and evidence we already have, and actually translating that knowledge into practical, affordable and sustainable solution for children in countries like Timor-Leste? And what role can young people and university students play in closing that gap? So, as a university student, what can we do in closing the gap?
Can you please summarize the question? Just go straight to the question, please.
So there is a gap between scientific knowledge about child nutrition and the practical solution.
Okay. There's a gap. There's a gap in the scientific discovery, scientific advancement, but with the practical reality. How should we address these gaps?
So this happens everywhere in the world. Scientific discovery does not have a trickle-down system. It doesn't hit the ground. And so it's set up on the shelf in a research lab at a university. What you need to do, and what your colleagues need to do, is say, we have this gap. We demand that it be closed. That we need to take the science that we have, which is, we have the science, we have the will, we know what the need is. We want to close the gap. Let's take the science out of the academic institutions and put it into practical applications as quickly as possible. And it's a matter of you all getting together and saying, we understand what the problem is. We know that we have some of the solutions. How come we can't get it on the ground?
I think due to the time limit, but before that, may I ask the members of the government if someone would like to comment on the role of the government to address this nutritious food system, not merely a health sector objective, but agricultural sector objective. But anyway, we have reached the end of the session, but allow me to also inform everybody, especially the students and the professors, that we are going to come back. We are going to have this agricultural transformation in fragile settings session tomorrow, around the same time here. So I invite everybody to be back and also to have more interactive discussion with Professor Shapiro, who's going to appear alone tomorrow.
Can I say one thing?
Yes, please.
I see the distinguished president has joined us. We've been discussing at length the fact that we have an issue that's been brought up to us about stunting in children in Timor-Leste. Our whole conversation today in this panel has been, how do we close the gap between scientific knowledge, application into the field, into certified seed, into the hands of the farmers, so that we can eliminate this as quickly as possible. And I think we've had a great discussion about how do we connect the science with the ground. And somehow there is a disconnect. And what we've talked about is improving fundamental nutrition in the backbone foods of Timor-Leste. I can't tell you what they are, but I bet if we did a survey of 100 or 200 people, the same foods would start to come up. How do we improve the leafy greens so they have more folates in order to build better neural tube development in the brain? What are those key things that we need to do? And we've encouraged the students all to become plant breeders in order to make this happen as quickly as possible. So I appreciate you're here to hear the end of our conversation, and we look forward to helping you any way we can through the World Food Program. The new director is sitting here. If you'd raise your hand. Yes? And I know that David Beasley is impassioned about this on so many levels. It's a social, cultural, humanitarian issue never to have another child born stunted in Timor-Leste. It would be a blessing if that were to happen sooner than later.
Mr. President, before you arrived, when we started, we were also boasting about how much progress has been made, but there's so much more work that must be done. One of the things that I've done is I've traveled around the world meeting with leaders all over the world in some of the most difficult places. The first thing that I look for in a leader is not how much they have up here, it's how much they have right here. There's an ancient verse in Chronicles, in the Torah, back in the Old Testament, that says, the Almighty, God's looking for a man, a person, male, female, with a good heart to bless. And the conversations, Mr. President, that I've had with you, I've been so impressed with your heart, your desire for achieving the good things that can be achieved in a nation that's getting its feet on the ground, and there's so much more work that needs to be done. But it all starts with the heart, and I have no doubt with the light that's in your heart, and I see the light of these young women and young men here, a lot of great things are going to happen. So thank you for letting us be with you.
Thank you. Allow me, before closing the session, to summarize the advice and the recommendations made by Professor Shapiro and also Governor David Beasley, that Timor-Leste should build a food system led by the government in partnership with the private and business sector, a system that is financially viable, technically feasible, environmentally sustainable, operationally deliverable, and socially and politically acceptable. And we could start by focusing on the seeds, in particular, to make our seeds adaptive to our setting conditions, to produce nutritious food, and also to focus also on water harvesting. Despite we are largely dependent on rainfall every year, but there's also plenty of water underground we could make better use for our farming systems. And also that Timor-Leste is not alone. There is plenty of support from the world, and they can assist us in reaching the goals that we set, and also the advice that they provide, that Timor-Leste should consider having the nutritious food not just a health sector objective, but also an agricultural sector objective. Lastly, please join me in congratulating Professor Shapiro and also Governor David Beasley for very illuminating speeches for this Feeding and Sustaining the Planet session. Thank you. Please join me. Our dear students will have another session tomorrow at the same time with Professor Shapiro.
Thank you very much, Dr. Edmundo Viegas, and thank you as well to Dr. Howard Jan Shapiro and Mr. David Beasley for that important discussions. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, our final main panel for today turns to health, medical science, and human development. This session is entitled Health and Human Development. We are honored to welcome Professor Tim Hunt, recipient of 2001 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine, and Dr. Frederick Ramsdell, a distinguished immunologist internationally recognized for his work in immunology. Moderating this discussion is Dr. João Soares Martins, a Timorese medical doctor, public health specialist, and academic with extensive experience in health sciences and medical education. Dr. Martins, Professor Hunt, and Dr. Ramsdell, the floor is yours.
Thank you, MC, for inviting us and inviting me to moderate this session with Dr. Tim Hunt, a Nobel laureate in medicine, and also Dr. Frederick Ramsdell, a Nobel laureate in immunology. We are great this afternoon because Mr. President is with us. Thank you, Mr. President, for making the time to be with this audience, and I hope that everyone here will enjoy the presentation from our two great speakers. They are Nobel Prize winner in biochemistry and also in immunology. Let me briefly read biography of a very brief one. Sir Tim Hunt is a British biochemist whose discovery in cyclins helped reveal how cell is controlled. Working in the sea urchin eggs in the early 1980s, he observed protein that appear and disappear rhythmically as cell divided. This led to identification of cyclins, key regulators of the cell division. Dr. Hunt shared 2001 Nobel Prize in Physiology Medicine with Leland Hartwell and Paul Nurse for discoveries of the key regulators of the cell cycle. Dr. Hunt spent much of his career at the Imperial Cancer Research Fund, Cancer Research UK, and has also been deeply involved in scientific education, mentoring, and international research network. While Dr. Frederick J. Ramsdell is an American immunologist and biotechnology leader, his research helped explain how the immune system prevents cells from attacking the body ounce tissue, or we call it autoimmune disease. With Mary Branknow, he identified the mutation of the FOX3 gene as the cause of severe autoimmune disease. This work became central to understand regulatory T cell and peripheral immune tolerance. Dr. Ramsdell shared Nobel in physiology in 2025, just a year ago, with Branknow and Simon Sakaguchi for discoveries concerning peripheral immune tolerance. Dr. Ramsdell's career has moved between research institutes and biotechnology companies, including Gemogenetics, Novo Nordisk, the Parker Institute for Cancer Immunotherapy, and Sonoma Biotherapeutics, which he co-founded. He is also currently associated with Sonoma as a scientific advisor to the board that he chaired. So I give the time between 7 to 8 minutes to each to Dr. Hunt as well as Dr. Ramsel to say remarks to our audience. So the time is yours.
Who should go first?
I think by age would be, I'm sorry, Dr. Hunt should go first.
I'm older, but no wiser, unfortunately. We feel very small here after the previous discussion, very small indeed. Because frankly, I think it would be true to say that both our careers really rely on a luxury that this country probably can't afford, which is tremendous investment in basic research. And I say that I'm sure this is true, because basic research is very, very, very wasteful. Most of what we do doesn't work most of the time, and our rare successes are celebrated. But the investment, I mean, somebody once explained to me how much it costs just to produce one article in the PNAS, which is a perfectly respectable journal, I think you would agree. And it was something like $250,000 for 5 pages. Now that's something to think about. I'm not sure, maybe it's even more today, I don't know. I haven't seen a recent calculation of that. But it's of that, you know, this is the order. So what can we say that's useful to you poor people? Because you can't afford us. But what we can say is that I think actually the things that we learned to do were very simple, very basic, and perfectly applicable to really all problems that you face. I mean, it's a matter of being absolutely true and honest. And put it this way, you know, one of the first things that I learned as a scientist was at about the age of 11, when the science teacher had a test tube with oxygen in it. And what he did was he had a glowing splint, red hot splint, and he put it into the tube and it burst into flame. This made a deep impression on me. Later on, I learned how hard it is to work against the prejudices that you grow up with. The most difficult thing is to shake yourself out of preconceived ideas. And over and over again in my career, I discovered that was the most difficult thing. And I even today, years after I stopped running a lab, I find that I was so stupid 50 years ago. Things that I just read a paper which made me realize that I just overlooked the most obvious thing when I was a youngster. I mean, you know, only 30 years old or something like that. Stupid. Irritating. But it's this kind of thing, you know, getting your feet. I always tell people that they should keep their eyes on the horizon, but their feet on the ground. And it's very difficult, I think, in science education. I mean, the trouble with science education today is that you tend to learn lots of facts, and that's not what it's about. I mean, the facts are not unimportant, but the key thing is to find out how things work and to find out for yourself. And it's okay, you know, I mean, it took me years and years and years to become a halfway decent scientist, because I think I'm not that clever, you know. It's just, you have to find out for yourself. You have to make mistakes.
wonder how things are, and you ask people and they tell you things that aren't quite satisfying, and then you do experiments and they don't quite work, and then you edge your way through a fog to the truth. And I guess it's sort of like that in everything. But it is very difficult to convey as a scientist, the actuality of what we actually do, because it is so specialized that it's really hard to convey in simple language, the thrill of the chase. And that's sort of what it's all about. I mean, we were at a session earlier today when I explained that I thought the most difficult thing to do if you're a scientist is to find a really good problem. That means something that people don't know, that nobody in the world understands, and which you think you could figure out in a reasonable length of time by yourself or with the help of your immediate colleagues and collaborators. And, you can all think of problems like how does the brain work, for example. I mean, it's a perfectly reasonable question, but it's a very bad problem because it's much too wide-ranging. You have to think of something that you can actually make a difference. And that's how I was lucky enough to stumble on something that was a really important problem and win a Nobel Prize for it. I didn't think that was the kind of thing you won Nobel Prizes for because it was so trivial when I saw it. I mean, I just saw protein that went away, and at the time it was impossible for proteins to go away inside sea urchin eggs. Or any other cell for that matter. And, but there it was in black and white before my very eyes. And bang, my life was changed overnight almost. I had to change my subject of research because I realized I'd stumbled on something much more interesting and important than what I'd been working on before, and that was very thrilling. I'd love to tell you about it, but it would take much too long, so I think I'll stop right there. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Hunt. I would invite Dr. Ramsel to also share your views as well.
Thanks, Tim. I want to thank the organizers and the president specifically for the invitation. It's my first time in Timor-Leste, and I'm learning a lot. It's fantastic. I loved watching the young girls dancing yesterday. Was fantastic. I have to disagree with the president on something he said yesterday, however, which he said he didn't want to do science because it was too hard. I think that's slightly crazy. Science seems incredibly easy compared to building a country. And I'm impressed, enormously impressed. Like Tim, I will say that what we're going to talk about in the next 45 minutes, whatever it is, I think is going to seem trivial at some level compared to what we heard about in the last hour. However, we can only talk about what you know and what we do, and I think that's what we will do. I will say that the themes that Tim mentioned are common to most of us who do science for a living, and certainly the Nobel laureates in this room, and in this city right now wandering around. Finding the right problem that excites you and is both interesting to you and important is maybe the most important step in the whole process. And for me, it turned out to be the immune system, but for someone else, it could be, plant biology. It could be any number of other things. There's lots of things to study. Is so much more that we don't know than what we do know. There's an enormous amount of opportunity out there, and when you see something that is interesting and potentially important, for me, it became something I couldn't avoid working on. I had to study this. Now, I'm a relatively stubborn person. That's a pretty good quality in a scientist, to be stubborn. I don't like to lose. I don't like to give up. I don't even like to let nature win if I can help it. I want to crack the nut. I want to understand how biology works. And again, whether that is in Biology, chemistry, physics, doesn't matter. I think you need to be stubborn, you need to persist, you need to find ways through all the mistakes you and all your colleagues will make, because you will make many. But if you're persistent and a little bit clever, and you pay attention, you learn from those mistakes, which is, I think, something we've all done, and if you're lucky, you can actually stumble upon something really important. People like to say, Tim and I were talking about this earlier, people like to say, well, you're a Nobel Prize winner, you're brilliant. We're not brilliant. We're smart, we're good scientists, but we worked on a problem that was actually important, and we had some luck figuring out the solution to that problem. Everybody had some luck along the way. And I think you can make your own luck, but you need to be prepared to receive it as well. And so we have perspectives on some of this, but I think for me and for many of the Nobel laureates here, one of the things I would like to convey, at least, is the enthusiasm, the ability of people to find what resonates for them and to follow it and to really dig in, even when it doesn't work, when things go wrong, when it seems really challenging. If it's something that you think is very important, you should continue to work on that and continue to push forward, because that's what most of the scientists I know continue to do. Whether they won a Nobel Prize or not, they will not let go of an important problem.
You have to be a bit obsessive.
You have to be a little bit obsessive. You can ask my wife that. You have to be a little bit obsessive about it, absolutely.
Oh, thank you for sharing the very nice story and also the persistence, and also being a scientist, you need to be stubborn. That I like that terminology. That's very good. Perhaps before giving to the audience, I would like to put just one quick questions to you both. Given Timor-Leste, a small country, our state budget is also not as big as big countries. Should we spend our budget on the service delivery, or should we also consider some for research? As Professor Hunt said, research is actually a luxury. So should we be also taking part in this luxury, or should we just concentrate on the service delivery, given you still have problems like stunting that we just discussed before, which is still 45% of our children still stunted. So that was the question.
I guess the stunting problem, I mean, that is actually, this doesn't sound to me like a scientific problem, does it? I think that's the thing. It's more of a political or a social kind of a thing, I guess. I mean, I have no idea how you solve it. It's not my thing at all. I think it's, you know, I think scientific education is really, really important, and because it can be used to solve any problem that you work on. I mean, the techniques are really, really simple. I mean, you know, it's sort of no more complicated than, I like to give the example of wine tasting, right? I mean, you want to find the most the job is you want to find the best wine that you can afford. You know there's better wine out there. You know but there's also worse wine. So you know your budget. So what do? Well, you open all the bottles that you can afford, including the one that you just can't quite really afford. That's what we call a positive control. You open a very cheap bottle, which is probably really awful, and that's the negative control. And in between you have the ones which probably you can afford and could buy. And you just taste them. It's very simple. I mean, you know, and which one tastes most like the really good one, and then which you can afford. I mean, that's really all it is, I think.
Yeah, I will say, and I love the kind of about scientific education. So your point was, you know, should Timor-Leste become a research hub for biomedical engineering? I don't think that's any time soon. There's too much infrastructure.
Way to go before we get
There's
there.
too much infrastructure. But the principles of scientific education, scientific examination are really, really important. And I think even more important today than they were 5 years ago or 10 years ago, because it's also very easy to have disinformation out there. People lie. There are mistakes out there. People misinterpret things all the time. And having a critical brain, having people with the ability to understand and parse truth from fiction, opinion from fact, is becoming more and more important in the era that we're in. AI is a great tool. Social media is a great tool. But it has its challenges and it has its risks. And without the ability to critically parse what is coming at you, I think it's going to be a very, very big challenge. That doesn't mean you have to have you don't have to turn Dilley into Boston. Right? And you don't want to for a whole bunch of reasons. But having a population that's educated, able to think critically, able to determine truth from fact, will benefit the country multifold over the next decades.
Exactly. I think the trick is to inculcate a sort of experimental cast of mind. You know, we were told as students in Cambridge, when we were quite advanced actually, not to believe what we read, to find out for ourselves. And the way we were taught actually, even in the lectures, the really advanced lectures, was these are the experiments that have been done, this is what we think it means, what would you do next in order to push the story forward? And I think that was incredibly healthy. That and a lot of practical work, actually looking at things, probing at things, pulling things apart, seeing how they worked. Even, wonderful, in physiology, for example, we did experiments on ourselves. We took blood and looked at it under a microscope. There was one incredible one where one volunteer breathed into a brown paper bag containing sodium hydroxide. That meant that the CO2, the carbon dioxide that he breathed out, was absorbed. And so the oxygen in the bag gradually went down until he passed out. And that's what he did. They made him do little mental arithmetics. What's 2 plus 2, and eventually, and he just slumped over the desk. What that told, it was incredible. So this was supervised, so the minute he passed out, he was revived, obviously. But it made a very strong impression on me that it was the carbon, not lack of oxygen, that made you faint, and made you breathless. It was the carbon dioxide that made you breathe again. And it was sort of simple. That anybody could do that. And it taught you so much more than reading that in a book. It was so graphic. There you saw it before your very eyes. So, that's the kind of scientific education that I was privileged to enjoy. And it wasn't complicated. I want to stress that. It wasn't complicated. It was really, really simple. And, to get away from this beastly business of learning everything the textbooks say and just marking the exams to how, I had a horrible example with my younger daughter, Agnes. And she was studying pine trees. I think she was about 12 years old. And she had to learn the adaptation of pine trees to their environment. And it was a series of things that I didn't understand, what the book didn't really explain. And I then tried to sort of explain to her. I said, "Oh, Dad, just shut up. Don't try to explain. Just tell me what the answer is, because I get 2 points for this and 3 points for that and 4 points for this and 1 point for that." This is not education. It's mindless.
Yeah, a lot of it is really learning the process of how do you think critically, how do you question things. It's how do you not believe. A lot of the scientific literature is frankly wrong. I don't know how AI is going to deal with that, to be honest, but it's learning how to think critically is very much a learned skill. It is
seen to the heart.
It is not. It's not something I think most of us are born with. You have to learn how to do it well.
Yeah, I agree.
Let me just make a quick summary in Tetun so that our audience can get some point. Bom, usi itaninia panelista na Indrua, prêmio Nobel ya área bioquímica nomos imunologia, será professor Han yang kata atu investe ya pesquisa ne karun tebes, ne se dia kata luxury, ne luxo, tamba karun, porque precisa infraestrutura ne bema karun tebes. E quando há o serviço outro, a publica de artigo custa quase $250 milhões para a esta publicação E se a ideia que é importante, mas ita tem que manter até que ba horizon, mas ita nem sempre ia rai, né? Importante talvez. E ita tem que cientificamente, lá precisa tem que a pesquisa serve caro. Mas tem que Hanoi na bema que científica, lá metodológica, científica, também que tem que uluntos, tá bom né uluntos. Busca halo descobrimento na bema que precisa ter paciência e também energia toma que tem fotoma, a trune e tabela descobre buat na bema buka. Não é mais Dr. Ramsel, mas a tohanesang. Também quando itania presidente yang kata ciência ne buat toda motira, senhor Ramsel ne las buat ciência ne buat tira bye hela, Quando ita cara kai ciência ita bela heta, além de ser estudo universitário, agricultura, que medicina, que seja, e me aprende ciência, dal rumor difícil, mas da fácil, mas barato talvez, Então, how loke sessão vai te será? Que a Belhalo pergunta diretamente, porque a única oportunidade que teve e também e tinha prêmio Nobel e a área medicina e a ciência bioquímica, nomos e a ciência imunologia, mas ser mesmo que estuda medicina, que a nutrição, que né Belhalo pergunta, ou a audiência geral, mas Belhalo pergunta bacia, porque hoje se explica questões geral, a persistência, ser lá colher específico quando vai ser no descobrimento e a área cell regulatórica ou autoimmune disease. Né? Por favor, so I invite everyone, particularly for those who are studying medicine or nutrition or whatever science that you are studying, if you have doubts, if you have a question, then you are welcome to ask. Please make your questions straight and don't go round and round. Please.
I think we have a question over there.
From this side,
yes.
Anyone?
There's two.
Two. And that side? Anyone have question?
A pergunta vai ao senhor Frederic. Okay. O ensaio itabot ninha sentimento nudar novo cientista ou cientista foi ida o hira itabot halona tipo essa pesquisa foi sem querer like pesquisa nebe tipo essa pesquisa simples liu pesquisa simples né itabot sento ensa a bele lá tene liu pesquisa né itabot bele ganha o Nobel em 2025. Obrigada.
That's a very good question to Dr. Frederick. So what is your feeling when your research finally gained a Nobel Prize? So what is the feeling? And how come it become being observed by the Nobel Committee and finally awarded the Nobel Prize to?
So many people may know I was difficult to find. I was up in the mountains near Yellowstone in the United States. No cell service. I did not have my phone. So I learned 12 hours after everyone else I know learned about winning the Nobel Prize. My wife told me because we got hundreds of text messages when we finally got back into service. So it was shocking. It was surprising. I did not expect it. I had no indication that this was going to happen. I didn't even know it was the week that was going to happen. I will, and so I'm still in a little bit of shock because it's been less than a year for me. It's been 25 for Tim. So he's figured it out by now, and he and I will talk about that over a glass of wine later. But one of the things that I thought was fantastic about it is that it shined a light on the work. So the immune system, and I've said this in other settings, is intricately tied to every physiology system in your body. The immune system is older than the brain, it's older than the heart, it's older than any other organ we have. As soon as there was life on this planet of more than one cell, it had an immune system. And it developed into us in part because of that immune system. And that immune system is still tied into everything we do. And so for me, winning the prize allows me to highlight that, allows my colleagues to be proud of that, and to continue their work and continue the work that we started and others have done far more than I've ever done. And I think it provides just excitement and enthusiasm for a lot of people to continue this work. And so for me, that was really the most important part about winning this prize.
Alguém entende explicação em inglês? Emanuel traduz.
Bem, já é suficiente para responder a minha pergunta.
Obrigado.
Sim, só com meu todo respeito, a Bela convida a ir a visita a minha área. A área nebe na conoho tipo essa pequena expedições sira nebe a minha alunos se café de halona. Então vou tirar observa diretamente, não através de coisas simples, né? Nebe a minha fotina husi aprendo se por muito com a professora sira. Obrigada.
E nebe mané? A tu visita é nebe?
A parte
So she's satisfied with the answers, but she's also inviting Professor Tim and Professor Ramsel to visit your school. Visited what escola?
Here.
Oh, they have some show just behind. So maybe after the session, and we can visit.
Great. Will you come up afterwards and take us to the show?
Ja, partene que te buat rumah tu hato pergunta rumah at my front. Is there anyone wants to ask questions? That side half hour. Can my foot in micro? My only that. Yes, that.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rosmania. I work at institution in Dimo. I have question that what 3 daily habits have the biggest impact on long-term health? This is my question, and thank you, everyone.
Can you repeat the question because I hardly understand the question?
Okay, my question: What 3 daily habits have the biggest impact on long-term health?
The 3 daily habits.
Yeah, 3 daily habits on long-term health.
So Tim's lived longer than I have, so he should probably answer that.
One is to have a good doctor. But I think
on a daily basis?
No,
hopefully not.
No, on a daily basis. No, I like to walk a lot. And in fact, my phone tells me that I'm 10 years younger than my actual age because I walk an average of something like 12,500 steps a day. which I don't manage here because we're too busy, but never mind. And I think the other thing is to eat a balanced, healthy diet. And I'm very interested in food, and I easily get bored if it's all the same. So, you know, there's an incentive to vary it. And,
I'm trying to think of a third one. And
what's a third? Well,
I'm not sure I can go with a third one.
Keep alive and interested, I think, actually.
I do think keeping your brain mentally engaged is very, very important. I don't know how to turn mine off. I sometimes wish I could, but I can't. I agree with Tim on the other two, though. Some form of being active. I can't sit very long in any one place, and so.
And you like to go to the mountains?
I love to go to the mountain. It doesn't matter. Put me on a bicycle. Put me on skis, snowshoes, hiking boots. Doesn't make any difference as long as I'm actually moving. I'm pretty happy about it. But I think keeping your brain engaged is also very very important for personal happiness, but I think also for well-being.
Well, the other very important thing is sort of just daily interactions with other people, with friends, with colleagues, with the person at the supermarket checkout. You know, all those human interactions are terrifically important.
So you get the answer. So make sure functioning your brain, and then interact with your friends, your colleagues, your sisters, brothers. Do a lot of exercise and eat balanced diet. That is and sleep enough.
Sleep enough, yeah. Well,
very important.
And travel, actually. I love going to.
I don't know. They say sleep is important, but I rarely sleep, so I don't know if that's important. Of course, I may die tomorrow, so you know, we'll see how that goes.
Sleep is important to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Yeah, there's one right behind the flag.
Oh, please, young man, please.
Good afternoon, respected dignitaries. So my question is, how can a medical student contribute to human development beyond hospital and clinical care? Thank you.
How can what contribute?
How can medical students contribute to development beyond hospitals and health centers? So not just treating the patient, but they should do more.
Yeah, I think your first job is to be a really good doctor. And you know, and some really good doctors also do amazing things outside. But first and foremost, be a really good doctor, and see whether, in doing that, you can, you know, extend your scope, if that's your ambition, because I'm sure there are other things that you could do, you know, and there have been some instances of doctors who do great work for the community outside and, you know, do inspiring things. But I think your first responsibility is to stay grounded.
I think the answer is very clear.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
Being a good doctor and do a lot more for your society.
The great thing today about being a good doctor is you also have access to the rest of the world. Right. So yes, this is a small island, but it's not isolated. Right? You're connected to the rest of the world, and so I think being mindful of that, integrating that, bringing information in, helps you be the best doctor you can be. But I think it also will open up opportunities, and you'll see them by making sure you interact with maybe people you don't see here, but people out in the rest of the world, other physicians doing other things, looking at various diseases, conditions, things like that.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is terrifically important as you know, as a scientist, is just simply chatting to people, talking to other people, comparing notes. How do you do it in your place? What's it like to be? All that stuff. Try to get outside yourself.
I think Dr. Tim made a very good suggestion of talking to your friends. Don't just look on your screen, because otherwise you're not healthy if you look screen all the time. We still have more 10 minutes to go. If there is any question, yes, please, that side.
Hello. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is. Hello. My name is Giovanna, and here I would like to ask a question for both of you. So, as Timor-Leste works to improve health and human development, we face limited budgets and dual burdens. Malnutrition, stunting, and infectious disease, plus rising non-communicable diseases. And from a global perspective, what is the single most cost-effective investment in science and health that a small developing country should prioritize in the next 5 years to get biggest impact on human development?
So I don't know where the economists are. They should be answering this question. I don't know the answer to your question. What I would suggest is that, what I've heard, in fact, is that there is a developing challenge around what I would say first world diseases, obesity, heart disease, other things that will be continuing to grow here. And so paying attention to that, I think, is really going to be very important. And that's probably incredibly cost effective because there are certainly ways to modify lifestyle to help control a lot of those diseases. So that's not very cost challenging. I think the other thing, though, is to try to embrace as much as possible the global nature of health and science today. So you saw it certainly in the COVID pandemic, right? Everyone got that vaccine. That process and that premise, I think, can be expanded. I think that leveraging what other nations are doing, whether it's Australia or Singapore or Japan or US or wherever, leveraging what they're doing and establishing relationships with those organizations and those companies, I think will help integrate more modern medicines as quickly as possible without having to build everything internally here in Timor-Leste.
Yeah, that actually raises something that we haven't discussed, which is the international nature of science. I mean, there are no barriers. My closest competitor or collaborator could easily be the other side of the world, and knowing that it's really extremely healthy, I think, because you realize that science is a kind of international language which allows you access almost anywhere in the world. You can just immediately sit down somewhere miles and miles and miles away in a totally different culture, but enjoy, communicate exactly in the same level. There's an aspect of diplomacy almost about that, and sort of learning how. Yet there are cultural differences. I remember I had a student once who went to work in Japan for a few months, and she said it was amazing because sometimes they would say things that she thought were absolutely amazing and she'd never thought of, and then sometimes she would say something and they would all fall about saying, gosh, we never ever thought of that. So I think, the internationality of the knowledge and understanding base is something that you can easily exploit, more so today because AI makes the literature really, really accessible, and the only thing is to find out, go back to the sources and make sure that what they're saying, what you're trusting, is really true and trustworthy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think that brings us to the closing of the session. I invite all of us to give a round of applause to Dr. Tim and Dr. Ramsel for their nice, stimulating presentation. We hope that we could have you more here. Maybe we would like to suggest to Mr. President to bring you back next year so that we can have more discussion and engagement with our youngsters.
That would be great.
I think that's all our session. I think the message is very clear. Invest in science invest in good health as well, by doing simple things as having enough exercise, having enough rest, train your brains, and this is a very, very important, and interact with your colleagues, your friends. Do not focus on your screen all the time. That is a very good message that we come out from here. And being a scientist, you need to be really persistent. You need to be really, sometimes requires you to be stubborn. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Martins. And our sincere thanks to Professor Tim Hunt and Dr. Frederick Ramsdale. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our formal program for the day. We invite you to stay and visit the Science and Technology Expo, including presentations and exhibitions here at the Dili Convention Center. We warmly encourage everyone to explore Expo and engage with participating institutions, researchers, and students. For distinguished guests needing to return to the hotel before this evening's dinner, please report to the logistic desk. Thank you for everyone for your participation, and we look forward to welcoming you back for tomorrow morning for day 2 of our Science for Development Summit. Thank you very much, and see you tomorrow morning. Adeus. Ba itabot Sir Hoto na bema koing utiliza simultaneous translation device, al favor, moloksai, itabele fofil fali iha meza he parte sori. Ita sorumalo ate abang.
Diag belum ouvintes e harana Sir Hoto, irana makita foi acompanha e sessão da toloni oras loro krai kirane ene be maka etinia parito siram hato na sirania Hanoi dilo parito sose Sayana Sapiro no David Busley be kuleleu konaba alimentar no sustentabilidade para planeta. Ya, hadia alimentação no sustenta planeta ka alimenta no protege planeta. O insight bele produz aihang na tom ba emhotu. Mas be tempo nessa na fata importante ambiente no recurso natural siraba geração futuro. Ya, ia problema rone be liga maluma kanesa alimentar no sustenta planeta. E alimentarnya maga garante katak emahoto e aihanaton nutritivo no seguro. Ya tuir falmoka e sustenta ba planeta maka usa rai be tase floresta no recurso natural sira ho maneira responsável atau la estraga ambiente. Então itu precisa buka maneira tu produz aihang leutang sem estraga planeta. Ya, problema memang kita soru e mundo população continua aumenta, no necessidade baihang mos aumenta. Mas kita soru problema será nessa mudança climática, rai no BNB menos, degradação rai, poluição, lá com biodiversidade, desperdício aihan, dependência ba importação aihan. Ya, problema será né, bela afeta segurança aihan e futuro. Ya, oinsa ciência no inovação idane bela ajuda. Ida maka agricultura sustentável usa método nebe bela proteza rai nobe, mas bem na fatin aumenta a produção. Tecnologia agricultura maka precisa proteger aihores animal, floresta no ecossistema também será importante para equilíbrio natureza niang. E aí ponto zero maka tecnologia agricultura, ciência pela ajuda agricultor sira bel hatena tempo dia atakuda usa be ho eficiente no controla praga. E ponto zero maka ha menos desperdício aihang na be produz ona mai be so aihang desperdício. Ya honne belum ouvintes no haranaisera mai ita acompanhade hosi presentar na rua.
Ouvintes Rádio Televisão Timor-Leste a gente assiste durante lorong toma que dia nama be itala baru atu aprende tama ore os cientistas ser nebe mai participa premiado Nobel da Paz nebe sira Pfizer na experiência lu barak tebes no haure estudantes sira estamos orgulho estudantes ser nebe que se pergunta o liang inglês que haturu kata Timor-Leste bele duni atu aprende e iha dunia hanuing para atu aprende no contribuir para desenvolvimento nacional
Sim, bem earlier no telespectadores, no ouvintes rádio na televisão Timor-Leste, transforma ciência, conhecimento na inovação e a solução concreta para o desafio Timor-Leste. E daí essa mensagem que transmite durante a Cimeira da Ciência para o Desenvolvimento.
Sim, hauling é assunto barak na beita kuliah Cimeira da maka ida ciência para desenvolvimento serviço, e a ciência usa transformação tecnologia, e a bara saúde no desenvolvimento humano, hauling tópico serna importante los para Timor-Leste na benudar nação fong, precisa setor barak tebes na beka precisa tahu atenção ho de desenvolve, hauling ida é importante no RTTL na fatin transmite Cimeira da Torre Mata, hauling kata importante teve sua apresentação sir na kita hari acompanha a lorong toma que da ohininia e na fatin comissão organizadora a cara capela Bahia itania estudante ou itania povo Timor-Leste hotu na beka cara acompanha ou a cara mai participa direta hodi assiste Cimeira ne bele mai diretamente a centro convenção dele e belum diana orsida kalan lo que mos do público sema que ela ia pertence a CCD nia ou capital dele bele mai direta CCD onde assiste exposição nomos concerto música ba ohin lorai menian
sim também ia exposição tecnologia no ciência da né a universidade no escola sira nebe hatudo sirania ciência no inovação nebe sira halo nebe relevante ho Timor-Leste né
sim belum diana hauling na fatin ita convida ba telespectadores no ouvintes rádio televisão Timor-Leste mas que orsida RTTL la halo transmissão direta ba concerto música no exposição mas be iha lorong abang ita na fatin ho Cimeira ba desenvolvimento se hahu sidader to oras lorai
Dia hana fatin informa para telespectadores no ouvintes rádio na televisão Timor-Leste iniciativa Husi Cimeira idane nessa compromisso nação união onde investe a juventude reforça a parceria global no coloca evidência científica no investigação no potencial humano e a centro de desenvolvimento nacional
Sim, belum diana hanuing remata na itania transmissão direta balorong ohiniang e aprecia ba serviço comissão organizadora ne beke ita reka Cimeira ne lá ho dia krebes e entusiasmo juventude sirniang e Cimeira da nerasik musatudo katak sira hakar aprende duni hebot lugu balu ne beke apresenta os itania cientista sira hanuing to barohang itania transmissão direta balorong ohiniang how erleskeira
how Diana Branco
a equipe de produção de serviço, muito obrigado, Wayne, por ter atenção e que está a acompanhar a Cimeira, balorong abang niya.